Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy to have you around. Want more information about those sponsors, coupon codes, parent website, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com underneath the Season 9 tab and the Money tab at the top of the page. They're all listed for you. Well, Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Amy is the green thumb behind Front Yard Veggies. She enjoys showing and sharing tips and tricks for veggie gardeners and home cooks and sourdough bakers. Welcome to the program, Amy.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat about my favorite thing in the world, which is gardening.
Well, we appreciate your time and your information here. Let's start from the very beginning. How did you get involved in gardening? Was it something that you was at as a child level or found later on in life?
Yeah, so I grew up on a 40-acre, very rural, old farmhouse in Massachusetts, and my parents were kind of like 1970s hippies, back to the landers. They subscribed to organic gardening. Like, all of my earliest memories are being outside, going to the nursery, planting, like picking pumpkins, picking peas, just being outside, picking blackberries. Like, those are my formative memories. So after college, I bounced around. I was in different cities. I was in New York. I was in San Francisco, Los Angeles. And when we got to LA, we had outdoor space finally. So I was like, okay, here's my time to shine. I finally have a space to garden.
You speak of blackberries. I remember the story that my late grandfather said that as a child, they grew up on a farm, and he was forced to pick wash barrels, bins of blackberries. And,
oh my gosh,
and from
prickly.
From then on, he never wanted and never liked blackberries, would not eat blackberries. Grandma would never, because he was just burnt up because he was forced to pick blackberries as a child.
They are so thorny.
Yes.
I'm trying a thornless variety this year, but oh my gosh, they will get you.
So yeah, he didn't like blackberries. So that was a story there.
So what is one of the biggest challenges you faced as a small space gardener, and how did you get over it?
Well, when I started gardening in Santa Monica, the biggest challenge was we had no soil. Like, we had a concrete, it was probably a 40 by 40 concrete front yard. And that's sort of where the name Front Yard Veggies came from, because I was like, well, this is the sunny space I have. I guess I have to figure out raised bed gardening. So that's really how it started. It was just, I always think that constraint breeds creativity. And if I always tell people to begin where they are with what they have, because if I had waited until we're back in Massachusetts now and I have a, 2,000 square foot vegetable garden now because we're on an acre and a half. But if I had waited until I had this space, I would have missed out on years of learning and trial and error. So, I always think, like, if you have a little bit of sunny space, you can make it work. You can do a container. You can at least just start and try and learn and figure it out. Because who knows when conditions are going to be quote unquote perfect, and nothing's ever perfect. My garden's huge and covered in weeds now.
Welcome to the club.
I
know. When you had that front yard garden, for people who may have that only option, was there restrictions from the city? Did you kind of ask before or ask for permission and following, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so there were no restrictions from the city. And I applied for a community garden plot because they had a thriving community garden in Santa Monica, but the wait list was 8 years long. I said, oh, yeah, crazy. And I applied in Brooklyn too, and it was similar.
But
so I was like, okay.
That's a good thing. People want a garden, so that's good.
If I could put some raised beds in, and that I would take care of drainage and power wash the ground, and he said totally fine.
Okay. But there is some places where you've kind of got that's not prohibited or not allowed. So I just wanted to bring
I know.
that up.
Sometimes people have, so we were, for context, it was the front yard, but we were in it was like a trio of little, like, California bungalows. So we were kind of like the middle unit. There were 3 individual units. So we were the middle one. So you couldn't see it from the street, but it was like from the house, it was our front yard. But yeah, HOAs, I know there are some constraints in certain locations, which is unfortunate because I would much rather look at a vegetable garden than a boring grass lawn.
Right. And doing that, if you expand that out, front yard garden, people are walking by, there's going to be communication that otherwise would never exist.
Totally. I know. I feel like people, even we were set back from the street and people would have to walk up the driveway, but I met so many neighbors because you could see, I had corn growing, I had passion fruit vines. So I met so many people and they would pop their heads in and be like, what, can I come see what you're growing? I said, absolutely. Come on by.
That's fantastic. So tell us more about your blog, your website, frontyardveggies.com, what people can expect when they go take a look.
Sure. So initially, it's funny. It started when I was in Santa Monica, and I just kind of wanted to, I was a little overwhelmed learning about gardening because I feel like every website I saw was beautiful and the gardeners were so professional and they knew what they were doing. And I was like, I want to go through this as a beginner. So everything I put out, I really try to keep that beginner mindset and just remember how, there are things that we take for granted now. Like I could wax poetic about compost and mycorrhizal fungi and, succession sowing. But I really try to think about like when I was starting from square one, like what's the bare minimum that people need to know to just start? Like, I think that's the biggest hurdle for some people is just feel like you're empowered to start somewhere and not feel like you have to be perfect. So I try to approach gardening and cooking and baking from scratch with that beginner-friendly mentality.
Well, I got another grandpa story there. Growing up on the farm, Dad and Grandpa would work together, and Dad would always say, well, you think it's a good time to plant? And Grandpa would always say, those seeds are going to grow a lot better in the ground than they do sitting in that bag in the garage. So
exactly.
Put them in the ground.
I know. Even now, this year I feel a little behind. I'm probably 2 or 3 weeks behind where I would normally be because we've had such a wacky New England spring. Mm-hmm. But I just probably a couple of days ago, I just put my beans and corn and summer squash, winter squash in the ground. And I was like, they're definitely not growing in the seed packets right now. So worst case scenario, they don't grow and I planted some or they will grow. So
where we're at, we're exactly the same as you. We're about 2.5 weeks behind normal because we had some cold snap in there that we weren't going to risk it. That's
what every single gardener I've talked to, bar none, has said the same. Like, this has been a bizarre spring. Like we had, even now we've been waking up and it'll be high 40s in the morning. It's the middle of June.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's better than 100 degrees, but it's wacky.
Many people want to start sourdough, but are intimidated by it. What are some good beginning tips for you? And the sourdough is a better option for making bread than what we traditionally make bread, correct? Because of our body, the way it breaks down?
I've heard that. I've heard that it sort of pre-digests some of the glucose or some of the gluten. So people who, might have a gluten intolerance are able to tolerate sourdough. And let me tell you a quick funny story about how I even started on sourdough. We were watching this documentary on Netflix. It was Michael Pollan's Cooked, and it was like a 4-part series. And I think they touched on, it was about a book that he did, and it was like air, water, fire, something else. And one of the episodes was about, all you need to make bread is flour, water, and salt. And I paused it and looked at my husband. And I said, what about the yeast? And it felt so silly because but sourdough wasn't even on my radar. This was, probably 2016 or something. So when it got trendy during the pandemic. Right. And I kid you not, while we paused that show, I went to the kitchen and I Googled how to make my own sourdough starter. And I just made one and I tried. And it really is not, it's like the oldest form of bread making. And I think people like to overcomplicate it because, social media, everybody's making money and people can sell courses and they can, they have information that you don't have. So you'll pay them. I think the way I tell people to do it is I used the Kitchen. So KITCHN. I think I just looked up the Kitchen's sourdough starter recipe. I followed that. And then there's also Tartine. It's a very famous bakery I think it's up in San Francisco. And they have a country bread. And if you just Google Tartine country bread, they tell you exactly how to start your own starter. Sometimes people sell starters or you can get it from a neighbor, but I think I have a TikTok. Maybe I can send you guys a link after. I think I have a pretty good explanation of how I feed it, but there's so much information out there and it's free. So I would tell people don't buy a sourdough course. Just go to the library, use Google, and just try. Again, like with gardening, just try. Worst case scenario, doesn't work, then you try again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think anything fermented is like trial and error, and like you said,
not 100% guaranteed every time. Yeah.
And
yeah,
people buy these courses. I mean, I've made kefir, I've made yogurt out of yogurt grains, kefir grains, and I've even made yogurt from yogurt itself. And it's not that difficult, and typically you can troubleshoot, you can find all this information online.
But you feel better when you spent $40 on your favorite blogger. And,
no, I don't.
In 2025, we don't have that type of money to be throwing around.
Right.
We do it on the cheap.
Exactly.
It's called YouTube.
And I think that's...
I always say you can learn anything on YouTube.
Yes. For sure. And I think that many people are just like so scared of failing. And it's like, that's how you learn. That's how you learn.
Failing means you're trying. When you lay down and stop, that means you've lost.
Yes, exactly.
God, isn't that the truth? I just taught my daughter how to ride a bike. And I was giving her all those pep talks. And it's just like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And that is so true. From like kids to, like, we don't have to be perfect. It's boring if you're perfect at something. Also, people have been doing stuff for years. Like, I still mess up stuff in the garden. Like, perfect is boring. Perfect is not attainable.
Right.
We drive ourselves crazy.
Absolutely. So what are some of your favorite ways to upcycle or repurpose items for the garden?
Oh my gosh. I loved this question so much because one of my favorite things to do, I don't know if you guys do you have a Costco near you?
Yes.
Okay. So one of our guilty pleasures, because I've made croissants from scratch. I have 2 young kids. I'm not doing that frequently, but my kids love croissants, and I'm not buying a $5 croissant at a bakery. So Costco croissants are like, I don't know. They also come in this phenomenal big, I don't know, it's like a 20-inch clamshell container. Those are great. I've used those as makeshift humidity domes for seed starting. If we get a little cold snap, I'll throw them over some seeds that I just put out, like carrots or something that needs a little warmth to germinate. They also make good makeshift drainage trays. And then I always love to save like single-use yogurt cups, because I do a lot of like seed starting with my daughter's pre-K class, or I'll do some school activities, and those are great to use with kids because you can see the root structure. So I love the clear cups for educational stuff, and I've turned into like a borderline hoarder because I just think this is perfectly good. I'm going to use this 10-pound orange bag, and it's like mesh to wrap around a watermelon or something. Yeah. I hate throwing things out that have possible use, but my garage is a scary space right now.
We have an attic, and we bought camping property in the northern portion of Wisconsin, and there were things that had sat in the attic for over 15 years now that are having daily use when we go up there because we didn't throw them away. Yeah.
I know. I feel like I've watched and read so much about like just the waste that we generate, and I'm not perfect. I'm not zero waste, but I really do try to think about like whatever I'm bringing into the house. I do try to like. There's this one woman I follow on Instagram, and she has a tagline. It's kind of like, it's only single use if you use it once. And that rings so true, because it's just like, I feel like we've been conditioned to buy something, use it, and throw it away or recycle it. But you don't have to. Like, it can live past its initial purpose.
Well, and
gardening is a great way for that to happen.
And you look at some of the stuff, if you've still got grandparents or parents that are alive, you look at some of their stuff in their homes, that's still the stuff they got when they got married, and it's still functional.
Exactly. I know. I feel like things were, I think hopefully people are starting to come back around to that, because, it really gets to me, just the disposable culture that we live in, or just like, oh, I need the new color of this, or I need the latest and greatest. It's like, if you have something that works, don't waste your hard-earned money and toss it or donate it. Like, get use out of it. A lot of raw materials went into making that.
And the sad part about it, some of the stuff these companies make, it's designed to break and not be repaired, so you buy again.
Oh, don't even get me started. I could speak for way too long about that. It grinds my gears so badly. But I know I really do try to stick to like in the garden, in stuff with the house. Like, there's a term, it's like biffle, buy it for life. And I'd rather spend a little more money up front and have something like good quality that's going to last for a long, long time than,
buy once, cry once, and
buy once, cry once.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. Well,
exactly.
Well, Amy, we greatly appreciate the time. How can people find, again, your blog and places on the internet that they can learn more about you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I always love the opportunity to talk gardening with fellow gardeners. So thank you. I really enjoyed this. And I'm very easy to find anywhere online. I'm pretty much Front Yard Veggies, all the places. So my blog, I have a newsletter on Substack. It's frontyardveggies.substack.com. That's a weekly free newsletter. And then I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the places to help people learn to love gardening.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. We appreciate the information.
Thank you guys so much. You have a great growing season.
Absolutely.